All right, good evening, everyone. So our first item on the agenda tonight is a transportation projects update by the Montgomery County Planning Commission and our township transportation consultants. Gentlemen, you're up.
We'll have Matt Edmond. Matt, if you feel comfortable sitting down or if you want to stand at the mic. But this is council's annual transportation update of projects that we currently have going on, as well as projects that we have coming up. So we'll start, as you said, President McCouch, with the Montgomery County Planning Commission and Mr. Matt Edmond.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, Council. It's always a pleasure to be here every year. I actually look forward to this. Bill reaches out in early November and says we're going to have our annual transportation update, and if you want to be part of it, and I'm always happy to be part of it, but I always know it's coming. Bill never fails. So glad to be here. Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Matthew Edmond. I am the Assistant Director of Transportation and Long-Range Planning for the Montgomery County Planning Commission. And so as part of the first of what's basically going to be a three-person package of transportation updates, I'm going to stick to the larger scale, bigger overview, policy level information. The other gentlemen, my colleagues who will be talking tonight, they'll get into specific projects. I'm not going to really do that. But I want to talk about two things tonight. And is there a clicker, or do I just need to say next slide?
Next slide.
All right, so next slide it is. All right, so these are the two things that I'm going to talk about very briefly. I could really dive into this. I could probably take an hour of your time tonight, but I believe there's other business on the agenda, so I will not. So we'll touch up on two things. One is the status of turnpike interchanges, and the other is the big federal transportation and infrastructure bill that was passed about a year ago, called the IIJA or the BIL. They have many acronyms down at the federal level, and we'll just give you guys a brief overview of what that is and what opportunities might be out there for Horsham and other communities. Next slide. So first we're going to talk about the Willow Grove interchange. So this is important, right? Remember back in 2015, Horsham was part of an effort to release the Turnpike Corridor Reinvestment Project. It was a plan that looked at 7 new and improved interchanges between Bucks County and Chester County, all on the Turnpike main line. And obviously Horsham had a really important part. 2 of those interchanges were the Willow Grove interchange, which exists, and that plan looked at sort of reworking of that interchange for better capacity and traffic flow on 611. And then a new interchange at Welsh Road, which is technically in the plan in Upper Dublin, but it's literally just a stone's throw away from Horsham's border in the southeast. And so there's really nothing to report on everything except for Willow Grove. And you as a board may or may not be aware that your neighbor, Upper Moreland, they actually got 2 grants last year through the State Multimodal Fund, about $500,000+ to design improvement there at the actual Cloverleaf, and then 1.4 million or so for construction. You can see those numbers. The more accurate numbers are up there on the screen. So they had these 2 grants, and if you go to the next slide, Bill, this is just a really brief overview of what they want to do. If you can see that up on the screen. So south is heading left, and north is heading right, and that's 611 that cuts right through left to right there on the screen. And so the stuff in orange is really what they want to do. They want to widen the Cloverleaf itself for 2 lanes. That would also require not just widening that, but also replacing the bridge. And so they're going to try to tackle this in stages, using their own funds, using grants, using their own engineering, not waiting for the tip. We tried for a number of years to get it on the tip. We haven't really been successful. So they're going to take the initiative, and that's something that we've been counseling all of our townships to do. So that's what they want to do with that money. 611 bridge replacement is still unfunded, but they have money to design the whole thing and to get the ramp itself improved. They're partway there. So that's big news. Again, I don't want to assume that this council knows details about that, so I just wanted to bring that up so that you were aware of what's going on in your neighbor, because it does affect Horsham, as we all know. Next slide. One other thing I want to mention about the interchanges is starting back in June, Horsham and Upper Moreland and Upper Dublin and Hatboro and Abington decided they wanted to start meeting to talk about these interchanges, Virginia Drive, Welsh Road, Willow Grove, and how best to pool resources and work together to do a couple of things. One is to coordinate all the different road improvements that everyone's making. And then the other is to work together to lobby the Turnpike and state elected officials to try to get those interchanges into some sort of capital plan, whether it's the Turnpikes or the TIP or something, right? We want to get movement after 7 years of of trying. And you know, the good thing in that plan, that Turnpike Carter Investment Plan, is we got Lafayette Street in the Turnpike's capital budget, down by Norristown and Plymouth, and Upper Dublin has been taking the lead on the Fort Washington piece. But there's still 5 unfunded ones, 3 of which are here in the east and in and around Horsham. And so the feeling was that this group could work together, all 5 of them, bring in state municipal officials, share information, coordinate their projects, work with the Turnpike. And so they've been meeting, like I said, every couple of months to share that, talk about things, strategize. And so that's a really big deal because everyone hadn't really been working in concert together. And I know, Bill, I got to give Bill credit. Your manager has been wonderful about trying to bring folks together, get movements, actually see things done. He's been a real leader on that whole thing for many years. But now we're formalizing that a little bit. It's still a working group, but it's much more together than it ever was. And so that's worth mentioning here, too. Bill, if you can go to the next slide, we'll shift gears. We'll talk very briefly about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, otherwise known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So pick the acronym you want to use. I'm going to go with IIJA. That's a mouthful, but I don't know why they called it bill, because before they become laws, they're bills, so it's very confusing. So we'll say IIJA. Next slide. That was enacted back in November of 2021. And a quick summary of what we're looking at. It's $1.2 trillion. About half of that is for transportation, and about half of that is actually new. So this law funds a ton of transportation stuff, and then it has investments in other things as well: broadband, clean water, clean energy, sustainability. There's a grab bag, but really you got to think of it as the transportation bill. If you remember, if you're really into this stuff, over the years there's been ICE-T, Safety Lou, the FAST Act. That's federal appropriations for transportation. They do it every 5 or 6 years. The IIJA is the latest version of that big, massive bill. So you have to know that the IIJA really consists of 2 different types of funding pots. One is called formula. That's the money that every state gets, and it's apportioned by the secret sauce. And so it goes to PennDOT, and then PennDOT passes a bunch of that, or most of it, onto regions like ours, the Delaware Valley, Allentown, Lehigh Valley, Harrisburg, Berks, Pittsburgh, all those, they're regions. They all get some of that formula money. So it trickles down, and eventually it goes into the tip. And then it comes to communities like Horsham, for instance, in the form of projects. But another big chunk of it is discretionary. It's competitive grants. More than any other transportation bill the feds have ever passed, they invest heavily, more heavily than anywhere else, in discretionary competitive grants. And so that's important to keep in mind. So a summary of really what we're looking at, how that formula money in particular trickles down to our region. So our regional TIP, which funds highway and road projects, it's seeing about $185 million additional every year for the next 5-6 years. What that typically has meant is that every county has gotten a couple of new projects in there. None of the projects are in Horsham, but they are. It's one of the few times in my entire career at Montgomery County, almost 20 years, where we've actually gotten new projects added to the TIP. So that's a good sign. We got some things in there. SEPTA is actually getting $100 million more a year for their capital budget. So these are things that turn into projects that, even if they're not within your boundaries, you will probably drive through them or ride along them at some point in the next decade or so. And then, like I said, there's all these competitive grant programs. I'm going to go over a couple of them real quick. And so, Bill, if you could go to the next slide. So these are just a sampling. Literally, guys, there's hundreds of these things. Many of them don't apply to places like Horsham or even places in our region. There's things for western states and prairie areas and mountain areas, and we just don't compete for them. But 4 that we think are names that you should know. These are 4. NEVI is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. So that is a program that the feds and Congress created to get fast chargers no more than every 50 miles along our interstates and our major highways. Because if you own an electric vehicle, you have a hard time driving anything more than the local trips, right? If you want to get across the state, you got to time it. You got to say, how many miles can I get before I lose my charge? And where am I going to find a charger between here and where I need to get? Because I don't want to run out of charge in the middle of nowhere. So in order to make it easy to own an electric vehicle and get around, you got to have chargers. So that's what NEVI will fund. And that's a state program. They're going to trickle that stuff down to our communities and some of our businesses. Safe Streets for All is a program kind of like the Active Transportation Investment, the last one on there, that will fund things like sidewalks, trails, things to kind of make our roadway network a little less about cars, a little bit more about people and pedestrians and other ways to get around. And then the Bridge Investment Program, that's one of the big winners in the IIJA, is investment in bridges. Tens of millions of dollars of new money going to bridges, especially bridges that are off system. What that means is all of our roads around the county, for instance, They are classified according to a classification system, and the ones that are higher up, what we call principal arterials, like 63, County Line Road, 463, 152, those are the big roads that carry the most cars. And so they are on the national highway system. Now, a lot of your roads, like say Keith Valley Road, for instance, those are off your system. PennDOT doesn't own them, they don't carry a ton of traffic, they have a lower classification. And in the past, Congress hasn't cared too much about using federal money to invest in them and fix them. Because we all know, right, when we drive around this township, no one stops and thinks and says, oh, I'm driving on PennDOT Road. Oh, I'm driving on County Road. No one does that, right? All we care about, is that I can go from here to there, and the road is open, and the road is okay. So Congress really is going to be investing heavily in bridges, and I think there's opportunities for Horsham in particular to, over time, get some of that money to fix some of the bridges that you guys have on your roads. Next slide. So things to keep in mind about that. I don't want to raise expectations and let everyone think that this is just a money tree and it's just a matter of, hey, how's Horsham pluck some dollar bills off of it. We've got to keep in mind, to be realistic, that Congress, they want to fund big projects. They want to fund them in urban areas. That's just the name of the game right now in political circles. So, you know, Philadelphia will fare pretty well on this. It'll be a little bit harder for our counties and our communities to compete with some of those places because they also care about equity. And so equity is a big piece. Disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged people groups. Congress wants everyone to plan first and then spend the money. So no idea of saying, hey, you know, I think our manager has this idea, how do we get money for it? They want to see that it's in a plan. And some of their programs actually require you to do planning and get that grant first. The competition is nationwide, so, you know, like I say, Springfield, Montgomery County is no different in the minds of some of the folks in DC than Springfield, Massachusetts, right? So you're competing with everyone, and the decisions are made by people in DC. You got to really make the case. So there's opportunities, but there's also some obstacles, and we just need to be clear-eyed about that. Bill? So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions if you had any. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mr. Frary.
I just had one question for you.
Sure.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with the interchange project. This is merely anecdotal. That's my daily drive, and it seems like Mill Road is quite an inconvenience. So it's not just the interchange, but it's also the lighting sequence, especially as I'm trying to get off the turnpike and heading northbound on 611.
Yeah.
It pretty much backs up all the way to the tolls.
Yes, I'll tell you, Sean, signals are owned and operated and maintained by municipalities. So if my memory serves me correctly, if there's a signal issue there, it would be Upper Moreland that would control that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But just to follow up, Sean, too, on this interchange coalition, one thing that they're also looking at is all the side roads. So we're looking at side roads because if these interchanges do come to fruition, there's going to be a lot more cars coming off, and if they do away with these toll booths, which 2024,
Maybe.
the cars are really going to be, I don't want to say flying, but coming off more rapidly off the turnpike, and they need somewhere to go. So if the lights aren't timed right, if that's what we're doing on Blair Mill Road. So Blair Mill Road is preparation for not only our economic development for the office park, but if the Welsh Road interchange just happens, and even if it doesn't happen, Willow Grove's going to happen. So it'll be able to take traffic to and from Willow Grove with 5 lanes a lot better. So we are looking at the side streets and everything around the interchanges too, to make traffic move.
Projects like Horsham has been tackling, like on Blair Mill Road, for instance, that's just one example. Upper Dublin's been making improvements on Drescher Town Road. All of those improvements, we learned from the Lafayette Street project. In order to make an interchange, a new one work, you've got to tackle things on the surrounding roads. It's not just about that physical interchange. It's all the things around it. And that's why that Eastern Monco Interchanges Group is important, because that allows all these municipalities to start coordinating with each other and working together and saying, all right, who needs to go first? What's the sequence? How do we make sure that we're not working at cross purposes? And you know, Upper Dublin's got a project at the Triangle, and then you guys have a project on Blair Mill or Welsh, and everyone gets snarled. So that's, to Bill's point, that's why it's so important that everyone's working together.
So, with all that being said, we still have no idea how long it's going to take to get any of these projects on the tip
No.
started.
And frankly, I would say probably the best bet is to get the interchanges themselves probably on the Turnpike's capital plan. I would push for that first before the tip for some strategic reasons that would be too deep to go into right now. But yeah, it just, we've been able to add some projects to the tip, and I hope over time we do. But what we find is that whenever Congress or the state passes an infrastructure bill and they fund transportation, there's an initial flurry of activity and burst of new projects, and over time, because things don't keep up with inflation, your spending power gets eaten away. So 5, 6 years after a bill like the IIJA, you're maintaining stuff, you're doing the projects that you already have programmed, and there isn't capacity to just keep adding things. So the tip is, sometimes it's a tool, oftentimes it's not as lucrative as we think it is.
We've been talking about these interchanges forever.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, Mark, we're playing the long game here, the Turnpike, unfortunately.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're up, buddy.
Yep.
Good evening, and as always, it's great to be here and give you an update on, the projects that you're, really leading relative to transportation in Horsham. Matt kind of touched on things from a national, statewide.
Get closer to the mic.
I'm sorry.
He's having a problem here.
Sorry. Matt touched on it from a statewide, national perspective. I want to touch it on a little bit more local perspective. And Bill, if you go to the next slide, I thought I'd start with an overview to look at what projects that PennDOT is leading or that PennDOT is partially funding in Horsham Township. And to touch on what Matt just mentioned, I mean, this goes back to Act 89 of 2013. So what we, at that time, called a decade of investment, really kickstarted a lot of these projects, but as Matt also mentioned, things kind of slowed down with inflation, and certainly code didn't help in terms of generating revenue for transportation. But I think if you think about 10 years ago, I don't think any of these things were going on, and there was a conversation with Todd, and I know he's not here, but there was nothing being done in Horsham Township. We had a meeting with Secretary Riches at the time, said, listen, Act 89 has happened, but there's nothing planned and programmed in Horsham Township. And the result of those conversations were these projects. So County Line Road is under construction now. Finally, it's going to be under construction for another couple more years, but it's certainly an investment in a perimeter road in Horsham Township. I'll mention the Maple Glen Triangle is a project that's been on the books for, Matt, you could tell me, decades.
1984.
I can say it is just now getting restarted in some form or fashion. We're going back to look at scoping the project, looking at right-of-way. But I'll say that Horsham and Upper Dublin need to decide what they want to do in Maple Glen. I know most of it's in Upper Dublin, but a lot is happening in Maple Glen, a lot of changes. So there will always be a need for the state to come in and make the road improvements. Developers can do some of it, but there's always going to be missing pieces. So there needs to be some collective discussion and plan on what ultimately do we want Maple Glen to look like. So that's another project that's going to be down the road a little bit. The other two are critically important because one, it's something that Horsham Township decided to take the lead on. Todd Stevens was instrumental in getting the grant funding, and I mentioned Act 89. The Multimodal Transportation Fund and the Commonwealth Finance Authority was created under Act 89, which enabled municipalities like Horsham to take advantage of money to get projects started. So we'll go into a little bit more detail in terms of the Blair Mill Road project and the Horsham Linecomb Road project, but those projects are partially funded by the state through the multimodal fund, so it's critically important that you understand how that money is being spent. So with that, Bill, you want to go into the next slide? So I am happy to report, and I think you're aware of this, Blair Mill Road finally is out for construction. We had a flurry of activity in the early part of the year where we were able to receive right-of-way clearance and utility clearance. Hit a little bit of a snag in trying to get PennDOT to accept the pedestrian lights that you all have kind of approved and selected in terms of the type of lights that you want. Didn't necessarily meet specifically PennDOT standards, so we had to go through a couple rounds of iterations to get them to accept them and got an exception approved. And once that was done, we were able to get the HOP issued by PennDOT, and shortly thereafter, we were able to advertise the project, the bids were received, and to my knowledge, the construction contract has been signed, if not soon to be signed. Assuming yes. NTP, probably in January. I know PennDOT's looking to schedule a kickoff meeting with the contractor. So things will start to pick up probably in January. Once we meet with the contractor, we'll get their schedule, so we'll have an idea of what they see in terms of sequencing and timing. But It's most likely going to be a 2-year construction, depending on how quickly utilities can move, and we all know what that means. But expect 2 years of construction along Blair Mill Road. So long time coming, but good to see some activity finally. So with the next project, as you're all familiar with, the bigger of the two, which is the Horsham Limekiln Road improvements, we're at a point where we're in the middle of right-of-way acquisition. Just to give you some context in terms of numbers, there are 39 impacted property owners, but 45 or more parcels. So obviously there's some individual owners that own more than one parcel, includes the township. 20 residential strip takes, frontage or drainage easements, 30 displacements and demolitions, and to date we've settled 13 of those parcels. So we're making some progress. But right-of-way acquisition is a difficult process, takes some time, so we're going to continue to meet with each individual property owner. Bill's done a great job in just talking to them, making sure they understand what's going on, making sure they understand, and we hear their concerns in terms of the road improvements, make sure the acquisition and any other conditions are met. So it's an important process. It takes time, but it's, to Bill's point, we need to make sure they're satisfied with what's going to happen, so they don't cause any issues down the road. So to this point, I think we're making some progress, but it will take some time. So the next steps for next year, we're going to continue the right-of-way acquisition and that clearance process. It will take probably the better part of next year to get full right-of-way clearance. We'll continue with final design, the plan specs and estimates, work with the utility companies and get that coordination and that clearance with PennDOT. We do have some environmental clearance to take care of in terms of DCNR and DEP, and then obviously the permits will be issued, and then finally with the HOP with PennDOT. And since we already addressed the pedestrian lighting issue with Blair Mill, we should be able to hopefully get that one taken care of relatively quickly. But if you ask in terms of timeline, we're looking at late next year to advertise and probably start construction in early '24. If all goes well with construction, or I'm sorry, with right-of-way clearance. If you go back to the previous map, I want to take a look at, if you look at the sequence and the timing for County Line Road, it's probably not a bad thing that Horsham Limekiln has taken some time, because obviously Horsham is the kind of the detour and secondary routes for County Line Road. So there will still be construction going on for the next couple of years. So like I said, starting construction on Horsham Road in '24 or even '25 wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. So if you can sequence those improvements, get County Line Road done, so when Horsham Road goes under construction, then traffic shifts to County Line Road. So as much as we'd like to get that moving, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a little bit of a delay. So for now, things are lining up pretty well, but we'll certainly give you an update this time next year and showcase some of our progress. So. Otherwise, that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the timeline for County Line, it's now open eastbound, correct?
Yeah, so I believe the eastbound direction is open, the westbound still detoured. So not to get too far in the weeds, there are I think 9 total different phases. They're kind of doing things a little bit out of sequence, but I forget what phase they're in. But they were able to open the eastbound direction. The westbound is still detoured.
We got at least another year, you said?
At least, if not a year and a half to 2 years, yeah. Bill, do you have any update on their overall schedule? I know they're actually ahead of schedule, so they're moving pretty well.
Yeah, they are ahead, but it's another 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Now it's 2 or 3. He just 1 to 2.
Oh, no, I'm a manager. He's an engineer.
I'm the optimist.
I always add on whatever the engineers say. I add on time.
Yeah, and we'll get there.
But
The contractor schedule, but yeah, each phase is probably a good year they're going. So
I think it wasn't 2025 or something like that they were supposed to be wrapping up.
Yeah, around that.
Yeah.
I think we were surprised that they even were able to open up the eastbound.
Yeah, like I said, they've been moving pretty well and are ahead of schedule, so that's always a good thing. So, if they continue on that track, their original schedule could cut off another 6 months or so. But it's if you've driven through there, it's a war zone, and it's not easy trying to maintain some semblance of traffic and build a new road at the same time. So.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else?
Yeah, just, some questions.
Any other questions on either Blair Mill or Horsham Landfill?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So this is the last slide, but it's just other things that we're working on. So as council is aware of all of these, but the new traffic signal on Blair Mill Road at the Horsham Gate and the Willow Point Shopping Centers where Hobby Lobby and Lowe's are, that light should be in by the end of next year. We are also replacing the traffic signal, the existing traffic signal at Whitmer Road and Prudential Road. We're hoping that's in by next year, but it could also go into 2024 to when that's completed. It is in our budget, which is on your docket for tonight for approval, to replace traffic signals at Drescher Road, Sawmill Lane, and New Road. Those are the last old galvanized signals on Drescher Road. So we have it in the budget for them to be replaced next year. As you know, our authority, Miria, is working on a new traffic signal at Easton Road and Moreland Avenue, but it's more than just a new traffic signal. They're going to be reconstructing the intersection so it lines up better. As you know, it's a very sharp intersection, and so they're going to be reconstructing it so it's more of a four-way intersection, and that will hopefully start next year and probably also go into 2024 until when it's fully completed. Also, in your budget, 2023 budget, is cost for engineering to start for the final phase, which is Phase 3 of Blair Mill Road widening between Welsh Road and Easton Road. And that will also include the intersection improvements at Blair Mill Road and 611. Also in your 2023 budget is engineering for the bridge replacement on Horsham Road in front of Cola Park. As you know, with the Horsham Road Limekill Pike intersection improvement that's going to come down to basically our building here, we only have a short stint between here and Babylon Road that isn't 5 lanes. But you can't do the 5 lanes until the bridge is done. So bridge is step number 1. So we have engineering costs put in the budget to start that for the bridge replacement. And then the final thing we also have in the budget through a grant is the next step for Route 611 Easton Road widening between Blair Mill and County Line Road. I think it was in 2014, 2016, Michael Baker did a conceptual study for 611 all the way from the Philadelphia city Cheltenham boundary all the way to Doylestown. So, but it was a conceptual study that was done and showed widening on 611 in Horsham to go to 6 to 7 lanes. And what the next step is a more engineered study that has to take place. There's a process in the PennDOT world. It's owned by PennDOT. If the road ever gets widened, a lot of state money needs to be used to widen the road. So you need to follow the process of PennDOT. So this study will take the next step, and it'll be a more, instead of a conceptual study, it'll be a more engineered study. And you know, it's $300,000 to $500,000, and it takes 2 to 3 years to do. And PennDOT, even though we fund it through a grant, but PennDOT tells us how to do it and what to do. So, but we'll be starting that next year with that grant money to take that next step to address 611 in the future with the redevelopment of the base. And that summarizes, I think, most of the transportation of what is going on, what's coming, and also even down the road in the future. So a lot of vision and a lot of thought to make things and just keep things moving here in Horsham, and cars and trucks. So, but I also want to say that, you know, we have a good team. You know, Eric, Michael Baker, Eric at Gilmore, and his transportation department, and Matt at the County Planning Commission. You know, it's a good team, people that have been around a long time. They know the issues, and hopefully we can get some things funded and done in the coming years.
You said the new traffic at Easton and Moreland, so, and they're going to be doing widening or improving the intersection?
Yes.
Who's the who?
Miria is going to be doing the work, which is a township authority, and then once it's done, they will deed
They'll be
over.
contracting it out.
They will be contracting it out. And then, once it's completed, they will deed not only the traffic signal, but also Grandma's Grotto property over to the township.
Nice, very good.
And that road will change from being on the angle to perpendicular.
Nice. Any other questions? Thank you both for your attendance here tonight, giving us these updates. It always gives us something to look forward to in the next 10, 15 years. No, it's great to have you out here, though, because it does keep us kind of motivated to look forward to, things that might happen. And as we get, people asking us questions, we can at least give some, insight as to what's coming down the road. It's been working. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, we have a public hearing.
Yes, sir. This public hearing is on the tax increase in the 2023 budget. We're required to have a public hearing on whenever you raise real estate taxes. So this hearing was advertised legally for this evening, and it's just to explain what the tax increase is and answer any questions that council or the public may have. So this evening, our 2023 budget is balanced at $19,925,148. The tax increase that is built into the budget is at 0.18 mils. So currently, the township real estate tax rate is 1.3 mils. With the proposed 2023 budget, it goes to 1.48 mils. That increase is split two ways. 0.09 will go to the Horsham Fire Company, and 0.09 mils will go to general services for the township. And the reason for the tax increase are the following challenges that we're realizing in our budget. The main three causes are the pandemic, inflation, and recession. So the pandemic, what has occurred is it took a little while. There was a delay. But now we are realizing the impact of the pandemic on our office parks. So we are expecting by the end of this month a $500,000 reduction into our earned income tax and local services tax from our 2022 budget amounts. And that's coming from a few things, all the office parks. And what's happened, yes, some companies have left, some companies have closed, but what's really affecting it is working from home, hybrid and permanent companies deciding to permanently work from home. That's really affected us a lot, almost, as I said, almost $2.5 million this year. Inflation, utility and fuel increases, also inflation, so our capital projects have every one of them, they've all increased 20 to 25%. New vehicles for 2023 are up 25% in cost. We just talked about the earned income tax. We're entering a time of economic uncertainty in our township, and our only lever to raise additional revenue, as you're aware, is property taxes. We do not have the benefit to institute a business tax, mercantile tax, per capita tax. All of that went away 30, 40 years ago. So we legally cannot institute any of those taxes that a lot of the communities around us have. So Montgomery Township, Upper Moreland Township, they all have all of those taxes. So if one tax goes low, they still have the tax revenue coming in from all those other revenue sources. And these two comments, as you've seen in the budget, our revenue stream has not been able to keep pace with our community's growth and the cost for service delivery, maintenance, and the ability to address future needs and projects. The future outlook is expected to see more growth in expenditures and further declines in revenues. Those are statements that have been in the township budget for about 3 to 4 years now, and it's just hitting us pretty hard this year with the what we're realizing from the pandemic. But our goals are the same. We are trying our best to do as best conservative budgeting practice as we can, maintaining our current infrastructure, maintaining healthy reserve funds in capital, roads, and parks. At the last at your last council meeting, I announced that Moody's has again rated us AA1, which is second to the top, which is, the top is AAA. And we have a balanced budget, and we are maintaining the quality of life and the services to the residents, and we are keeping the township moving forward, even with all these challenges that we're facing. But the challenges, unfortunately, are making us having to raise our taxes slightly. It's a small tax increase, but it keeps all of our services going. And that's really, that's the hearing, and that's really about what the budget's all about. And I know you'll be considering the budget later on in the meeting, but as you know, in our budget too, we have capital projects plugged in, our 2023 projects. We have money in there if you decide to do solar energy. We have money in there if you decide to move on pickleball courts. We have money in there if you want electrical vehicle charging stations. We have money in there for a detention basin retrofit. So, and that's just to name a few. So as each of those projects come up, most of them have to go to bid. So you have to authorize them to go to bid, you have to authorize contracts and all of that. So each one will be talked individually, as the year progresses next year. But the monies will be there if you decide to do them.
Right, and that's assuming that everything stays status quo,
Correct.
based on your projections. So
Correct. Yep.
if things get better, then we can do more. If things get worse, then we don't do some things.
That's right. That's what we did in 2008. We paused on
Right.
capital projects until things got better, and then we got going again with projects.
Well, you did a good job on the budget. And it's aggressive, getting things done, which is what we want to see. But again, we have to kind of wait and see as things come along. Hopefully, things will get better. All right, that took about 10 minutes. So our next meeting doesn't start till 8 o'clock, so.
Do you want to do some, like the minutes and the?
You can do something, sure. It won't.
It is some of the easy ones just checked off.
All right, thanks, Mike, you can go now. Just kidding, buddy. At the meeting, with the pledge, or just do the items? All right. So one of the first item on the agenda then would be to approve the minutes for the council meeting of November 9th and November 28th. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Treasury report.
The balance in the general fund as of November 30th, 2022 is $5,822,909.57. For the most part, the expenditures in the general fund reflect normal activity for November. As of the end of the month, we have received 114.28% of budgeted revenue and have expended 83.8% of budgeted expenses. Our budget has been significantly affected by the pandemic. It was a delay effect and more significant than anticipated. The primary revenue affected is the earned income tax and local services tax. The cause for the revenue reduction are companies relocating and closing, but more from companies allowing employees to work from home. This will have effects on our budget over the next few years. For a more detailed presentation of our current financial position, I would refer you to your monthly booklet.
We have a motion on the checks.
I move to approve the list of checks in all funds in the amount of $2,150,512.25, and further move to authorize payment of the same. I move to ratify the U.S. Bank credit card transactions for the month of November 2022 in the amount of $17,751.39.
Moved in second, all in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. Anything else we can do? All right, let's work on that one.
So the Act 57 was a state law that has been mandated upon all taxing agencies in the Commonwealth. And what Act 57 does, it allows taxpayers who fail to receive a tax notice during their first year of occupancy to apply for a waiver from penalties and additional costs from the tax collector. So this is something Horsham has always done. It's, someone moves into a new house, mail's being forwarded, sometimes mail gets mixed up, the tax bill gets mixed up, tax bill gets lost, but we've always done this if that situation arises, that we do not charge penalties or additional cost on someone. But now the state has made this mandatory across the Commonwealth, and all taxing jurisdictions have to adopt the resolution by January 9th.
Okay, you have a motion?
I move to adopt the resolution as proposed, implementing property tax penalty waiver provisions.
Second.
Moved and seconded, it's a roll call vote.
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Nesbitt, how do you vote? Oh, Mr. Nesbitt's not here. Mr. Wade, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Mary, anything else? Bill, we do expended funds?
That'd probably be your last one.
All right,
So this resolution for reappropriating unexpended funds, if I can get my resolution here. This is an auditing requirement, and basically what it says is there's certain expenditure accounts. So on the resolution is accounts 411, 413, and 492 went over budget. And what it's saying is the revenue count 310 is also over budget in revenue and has the money to cover those expense accounts. And that's all the resolutions. The purpose of the resolution, again, it's a township auditing requirement, and we just have to show we have the revenue to cover those accounts that went over budget.
motion?
I move to adopt the resolution as proposed, reappropriating unexpected funds in the general fund.
Moved and seconded, again, a roll call vote?
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wade, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, so we'll have to wait another 15 minutes, and then we'll start the next meeting. Call the meeting to order. All right, call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening, everyone. So the first item on the agenda is recognizing our PA State Representative Todd Stevens for his many years of service.
So we all know Todd, and I'm not sure if it was 11 years or 12 years, but I'll say 12. His wife probably thinks it was 50. But Todd, we did benefit from Todd being a resident, being born and raised here, but the work that he did as state representative in his district, but we're a little biased. We care the most about Horsham in his district. From any matter, transportation, and we talked about some of these transportation projects that are getting close to construction that we started in 2016 with Todd's help, and Todd got us the funding. For those projects that we saw up on the screen, $5 million, $6 million of transportation funding that Todd was able to get us for those projects. Park projects, very involved with the Miracle Field currently, very involved with the Soccer Association Turf Field, getting them state grants. And our PFAS water issue, our Willow Grove former Willow Grove base, what he did and what he did for us and our residents and our citizens was remarkable. You know, we all didn't know what was going to happen. You know, council sat up here in June and July of 2016, and you gave the staff direction that you wanted a Horsham standard of non-detect. And we heard you, but I tell you, many nights of sleepless nights of the what-if scenarios. How are we going to afford this? And, you know, our revenue is taxes and water and sewer rates. And long-term, how are we going to afford it? And, you know, our state rep, Todd Stevens, was right there through it all. Through it all with DEP, through it all with the Navy in the beginning, and then he came up with Act 101. So he got the money we needed in the short term, you know, $10 million, but then he didn't stop. You know, he didn't stop. He knew that the township and the citizens, the residents, needed a long-term financial help with this water contamination issue and cleanup. And he came up with Act 101 of 2019. And thank you isn't enough, Todd. And while he's doing all of that, he's still handling all calls about potholes, you know, calls from our chief of police, calls from our director of public works. We need help with PennDOT, you know, we need help here, you know, you need to cut through the bureaucracy and get us help, you know, to fix this pothole, get this sign fixed, or do, and he did it. He just, everything we asked, he called, you know, he helped us on. And we will miss him greatly as a state rep. Todd, you've been amazing. And what you've done for this community, I know most people don't even know what you've done. And I personally, as a resident, as a friend, also as a township manager, thank you for your service and what you've done for us over the last 12 years.
Todd, I know, like, over the years that I've been here anyway, we've given out a lot of these proclamations, and you've done your share to people as well. If ever there was a time to have a proclamation that was like 2 or 3 pages long, now would be the time. But we don't. We only have 1 page here. But he made the print so small to fit everything in that you've accomplished here in Horsham for us. And as Bill said, we can't thank you enough for what you've done for us, for Horsham, for all the calls you've taken from us. Everything Bill's just said. It's hard to, you know, I just have to repeat everything. And on a personal level, just your friendship has meant a lot to all of us up here, because we knew we could make a phone call and get answers right away without any hesitation. So I want to read this proclamation. It's going to take a while, but it says a lot, and it really does say a lot about what you've done over the last 12 years. So, be it proclaimed, it is with great pleasure that we recognize Todd Stevens for his 12 years of devotion and service to our community on the occasion of this time as our Pennsylvania State Representative. Todd Stevens, earning a bachelor's degree in government, began his career as an assistant district attorney in the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. In 2004, Mr. Stevens was then appointed Special Assistant United States Attorney. Mr. Stevens then served as the captain of the Sex Crimes Unit, the Clean Team, the Firearms Unit, and the Major Crimes Unit. Upon his resignation in July 2010, he achieved a 99% conviction rate as a prosecutor with more than 1,500 convictions and 18 homicide convictions. On November 2nd, 2010, Todd Stevens collected 53.05% of the votes to win the 151st district seat in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Todd Stevens is more than our state representative. He is our friend, a neighbor, in our community. A community that has greatly benefited from Mr. Stevens' efforts to make Horsham a better place, especially under his leadership during the PFAS contamination development and his influence at the state capitol to secure funding for major transportation projects, and recently having assisted with securing funding for the Miracle Field in Horsham and the Horsham Soccer Association's turf field. Community relationships were strengthened through his work with numerous township organizations. Todd Stevens was the instrumental leader and chair of the Military Installation Remediation and Infrastructure Authority, which is known as MIRIA, an authority formed by Horsham Township under Act 101 in 2019. Act 101 was introduced by Representative Todd Stevens and signed into law by Governor Wolf on November 27, 2019. Todd Stevens has forever left a favorable impression on those who have had the pleasure of working with him and also on the town he served so well. So on this occasion of his time as PA State Representative of the 151st District, we extend to Todd Stevens, our neighbor, our friend, best wishes for success in all your future endeavors. Congratulations, sir. If you just take one more second, I just would like to ask anyone else on council if they'd like to make a few comments.
Todd, I'd like to concur with everything that both Bill Walker and Mark have said. I'd like to thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you as our state rep, and I look forward to our friendship for many years to come.
I'd have this down by now. I repeat everything that they've all said. There's just so many selfless moments in your service here to Horsham. There's two that really just stand out to me. The one is probably last year when they were looking at redistricting, and they were really trying to squeeze you. And you said, I don't care what they do to me, just keep Horsham whole. And that, you know, that's selfless. And so that's just like a microcosm of all the other things. That meeting we had at McGurk's when things were going haywire, you and me sat down at McGurk's and we're figuring out this water issue. And this Myria thing that, you know, I've been on now, and Terry and Bill have had a chance to be on there. I still scratch my head that you got it done. In today's world, in today's government, with so much self-interest, the fact that you accomplished what you were able to do while running every minute of your life for re-election, trying to juggle the sacrifice of a family, it's really amazing, and you should just feel immense pride, because it was really, I still can't believe everything that you got done for Horsham. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
And I won't speak long because that's not my thing, but I just want to thank you also. I can't add really much. I mean, they said it all, but I'm grateful. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for you. And I'm grateful for being part of Myria too, and that's also you. And I scratched my head too, how you got that done and all those additional funds that we're benefiting from just because of you. But thank you so very much, and thank you to your family for all the time and years.
Todd, whenever I felt busy and I saw you, I immediately stopped feeling sorry for myself. I always appreciated the way that you make an effort to show up for all the community events, and I hope that you and your family get a deep breath, and I really appreciate everything you've done for this community, so thank you.
Can I say something?
Sure, come on up. You know the drill, right?
Which one's better? This?
Probably that.
Good.
So I can't thank you enough. You're very kind and very gracious with your remarks. I got to tell you, though, there's so much dedication and commitment to this community in this room, and you know, all the accomplishments you listed. You know, certainly I was happy to try to lead the charge, but it was a team effort all across the board, and you know, we had so many people rowing in the right direction and in the same direction and working together. And, you know, the staff here is terrific. I don't have to tell you guys, you know, Bill and Mary and Larry and just everybody here is just so amazing. You know, your public works team and Dennis and everybody is just really remarkable. And it's all because of a love for this community. So many of us, we're born here, raising our families here, and everybody just cares about the community, and I think that's what makes it such a great place to live. So, your leadership at the helm, and Bill, I will never forget the day, when the alarm bells were sounding about the PFAS and the water. We had all the water in town was shut down. They're giving out bottles of water back here, and I'll never forget when you called my office and you're like, well, we got a solution. We just need to find $10 million. And I was like, holy cow. Never in a million years did I think we were going to even pull that off. So, but you guys developed the plan, and I was glad I was in a position to be able to help with the funding. But it really is a team effort around here, and none of us can do it alone. And all that is also true of my family. I mean, my wife Nicole and my boys Will and Ben are here, and I couldn't have done any of this without their support and love at home. So thanks to them for sure, and thanks to all of you. And I'm sure that there's more things to be done in the future here. And I'll be a resident, and hopefully not making too much noise and causing you too much aggravation moving forward. But certainly your friendship, all of you, has been meant a lot to me as well over the years. So thank you all very much. See you guys over there. Thank you. So do I get a piece of paper or something, or what do I?
card.
Okay, we're going to do one for Mike McGee, and then we're going to do everything at one time. Works, so stick around. Next is recognizing the retirement of Michael McGee, our Executive Director of the Horsham Land Redevelopment Authority.
I think everyone in the room knows Mike McGee. Mike was our township manager from 1984 to 2010, and he retired in 2010 from that position. But he stayed on as executive director of the HLRA. He originally became the executive director in 2006 when Congress first decided to close Willow Grove, and Horsham became the point of contact for the redevelopment of the base. And since I lived it and watched what was going on, and had to, I wouldn't say counsel Mike, but I was the one, Mike just had to talk to someone sometimes. It was a scary time. It was, when you talk about these LRAs across the country, most of them are county and state authorities, much bigger government level authorities than a small local township authority. And once again, Mike had the vision. He knew that if we were going to control our destiny, our community was going to have the opportunity to control our destiny. 8 to 10% of our ground in Horsham Township, which is the base, we had to take that control. And Mike quickly learned what BRAC stood for, and quickly read up on the law, and knew what we had to do very quickly before another level of government came in to take control of the base. And Mike did it quickly, and got the HLRA recognized as the point of contact. And again, at that time, I can't speak for Mike, but I can speak for myself. I'm like, oh my God, what are we getting ourselves into? Just like when you gave us direction for PFAS, the short-term and long-term plans, like, oh my God, how are we affording this? But again, Mike had the vision, and he knew that if this town was going to move forward, if we were going to have the opportunity to control our destiny, we needed to be the Horsham Land Redevelopment Authority. And he proceeded with that, got the authority established, and has been our executive director ever since. And what a roller coaster it's been. We all thought by this time it'd probably almost be done, close to being done. But then PFAS hit us in 2014, and And, you know, none of us knew what that was. And, you know, Mike quickly jumped on that, got that under, learned about what PFAS was, and always, always, always had the best interest of the township. You know, that's, he did not want to put us in financial harm way. You know, a lot of times we say, oh, it's taken forever, but in a way it was good. In a way it was good that it took a little while, because if we would have started development before the PFAS contamination was found, and we would have had development started, homes built, families moved into them, middle school half-built, everything would have been abandoned, the lawsuits would have been flying, the township could be bankrupt. And so it's good that it's taken its time. That was one benefit that, with the contamination. But Mike has led us through the entire way, from 2006 to this current time. And always, always just had the best interest of the township. Sometimes we didn't like his answers, or we didn't like his recommendation, but we knew his recommendation was for our best interest, for the community's best interest. At the end of the day, his heart and passion was Horsham. He loves Horsham, and he doesn't want anything at all to come bad to Horsham. And if we had an LRA director from Connecticut or wherever that we hired that wasn't born and raised here and lived here all the years that he did and loved Horsham, you know, they could have made different decisions, because it would just be a job. Just a job. I'm just here for a short time. It's just a job for me. It wasn't just a job for Mike. Mike really cares and truly loves Horsham, and but he also knows it's time. It's time, just as when he was township manager, he knew it was time, and he's made the decision to enjoy and not have to travel here a couple times each week. So, Mike, personally, as a resident, as a friend, you mentored me. I shadowed you for many years, learned everything I know from you. So thank you, and I wish you well in your future endeavors and all you do, and don't be a stranger to Horsham. We want to see you around. So, but thank you for all that you've done for Horsham Township.
Mike, the beauty of having Bill Walker go first is that he gets to say everything that we're all thinking. So we don't have a lot to add, but basically, everything that Bill said is more than true, and it's rare for a single person to come along in a township and lay a foundation for the township, not only as manager for so many years, but then after leaving that position to come in and basically take the helm for the redevelopment of the airbase. You could have walked away. When you retired from the township as manager, you could have walked away and said, "Hey, I'm done. I'm going to go enjoy my retirement." But like Bill said, this was your life here, and you wanted to make sure it was done right. And you've certainly done that over the last 12 years. I'd imagine that in 2005, you didn't think you'd be retiring in 2022, and it's still sitting there vacant. I'm pretty sure you thought back then that we'd be, breaking ground and building things, and roads would be in, but you know how it goes, right? And you've experienced it all, and you've handled it with professionalism, and just personally, what we've learned, what I've learned from you over the years of what's going on, it's I can't thank you enough, because it's that kind of knowledge it's just hard to get. It's hard to get, and hard to get from at least one person, and you've managed over the years to give us this knowledge, the foresight to see what's going on, and hopefully as the base does get redeveloped, we'll continue to follow that vision that you've had and make this the right thing to do on the base. So again, thank you so much for all your service and your friendship as well. And the best to you and your family. We do have a certificate of appreciation, which I'll read and then I'll let other people talk. But it's a certificate of appreciation that says, it's proudly presented to Michael McGee for 12 years of unparalleled advocacy for Horsham Township and commitment to the thoughtful and comprehensive planning for the reuse of the NASJRB Willow Grove. Your dedicated leadership and steady vision as Executive Director of the Horsham Land Development Authority shall remain a hallmark of your tenure. Again, thank you so much, and I will open the mic up to anybody else.
I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to work with you for all these years. We've been messing with this thing since 2005. Bill Walker touched on something that I think is an important issue. The federal government, the state government, they all have their own visions and objectives. And over the years, with your leadership and the rest of the staff's help, we've managed to keep this in perspective so that Horsham's interests were first on the list with whatever happens over there. And you've created a situation where we're pretty well prepared to deal with whatever they throw at us. And that's truly because of your leadership and your involvement and your vision with this. So I also know that when you retired as township manager, you gave it some thought before you decided to take on the HLRA director position. And I just want to thank you for doing that, because we have really, truly needed and benefited from your involvement over the years. So thank you very much.
I join in what everybody else has said. Mike, I'm sure you're leaving with a level of frustration. 13 years, 17 years, that's not my strong point, is a long time to not see more structure, to not see more of a vision. We've all shared in that level of frustration, but the one thing that is somewhat comforting with all that we're dealing with over there is the fact that you've given us the tools to work with to continue in the future, whoever may carry that forward. I know that you leave leave us in very good hands. Between Tom and Mike Shinton, we've got really good leadership that's going to step in and hopefully carry your mantle forward. So thank you for all that you've done in the past as township manager and also carried the leadership forward through the HLRA. So thank you.
I'll just say, I'm also echoing everything that's been said, but I met you many years ago. You probably don't remember, but I met you on Election Day, and I thought you were so nice. And what I remember so well from that is how humble you were, and you were just talking about what everyone else does, and you weren't talking about yourself at all. And then that was, I saw it again when we took that little trip around in the van. When we went on our little tour of the base, you gave everyone else credit and kudos and accolades except for yourself. So I just thought that was so nice, and that's obviously who you are, because we're talking years apart, and both times I'm like, that man is so humble. So thank you for everything that you've done for Horsham. I'm glad I met you.
That was a great day in the van, by the way. That tour was good. I just want to say thanks for everything as somebody who grew up in this town, and none of this was apparent to me when I was growing up, and then coming in this year and seeing all the work that, Todd has done, you have done, my colleagues up here have done, is invisible to everyone else, but it truly has saved people's lives. And just with all the PFAS, it is truly incredible the work that you guys have done. So I appreciate you guys laying that foundation and allowing us to walk into these seats and take the credit for the work that you all have done. So thank you.
Very good.
Hang on one second, if you would, Mike. I think Tom wants to say something.
Thank you very much. Late this afternoon, I got a copy of a letter that came from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation in Washington, D.C. It says, Dear Mr. McGee, We recently became aware of your plans to retire from your present position as the Executive Director of the Horsham Land Redevelopment Authority, a position we have come to know and work with you since 2005. Please accept this letter as our expression of appreciation for the years you and Horsham Township, under your guidance, have capably represented local businesses and residents through the closure and disposal of the former NASJRB Willow Grove. Your efforts have shown that one truly never knows what they don't know when they embark on the redevelopment of former defense property, and it takes considerable patience and fortitude to navigate through the unforeseen challenges as they may arise. We hope we have had some small role in enabling your efforts over your tenure. While your leadership will be missed, you have put Horsham Land Redevelopment Authority on a promising path. On behalf of the department, we wish you much happiness and relaxation in retirement. Signed, Patrick O'Brien, Director.
Very nice.
I'm surprised that I'm not surprised, but I'm very happy that we had a meeting. Tom and I were in a meeting the other day with the Navy, and after that they presented me with a plaque of sorts. And Greg Preston, who most of you know, actually said, geez, I'm actually going to miss you. And you might have thought that I hate you, but he didn't use those exact words, but he said, you know, you've done what you can do for Horsham, and you've always been for Horsham. And frankly, I found that easy to be for Horsham. We have always had great people, good people working for us. Our elected officials over the years have just been, you know, you wonder why people want to go run for election. I mean, you work your tail off, and you know, you're not doing it for the money. You would certainly do better off at McDonald's selling fries. But it's been wonderful to work for Horsham Township. I'm so happy that the board, back in what year it was, I was appointed. I've been so fortunate. I am terribly disappointed that I'm leaving at this point without the work that I thought was going to take place on the base. Initially, when I retired, I was retired from being a township manager. I was 65, and I was really wanted to stick around for a couple more years so that, you know, I thought I could live long enough to at least see the completion of the redevelopment. Now I'm worried about living long enough to see the start of the redevelopment, although that's not correct, because we have started. We've gotten the Army base, the Army Reserve building, a wonderful high school, or grade school. We've gotten the old Horsham Elementary School property for more open space in Horsham Township. You know, one thing after another, and it's been said here and often over the years, we have a good team, and we've been very, very lucky with the elected officials that we've had to work with, and our leadership has just been terrific. And I've always had a good staff, and just wonderful job, and I'm so grateful that I was here, and I appreciate all your fine words. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to take a few minutes and have some picture taking. Todd and Mike?
Oh, do you want to do Todd first?
Do Todd and then Mike, is that right?
We'll do Mike.
Hey, guys. Let's see, so we're going to move down to the zoning hearing board applications? Bill?
Yes, sir, you have four this evening. Your first one is a residential at 1044 Davis Grove Road, and it's a front yard setback in this zoning district. Let me get my paperwork. In this zoning district, they have an existing patio that they would just like to cover with a roof. The resident has been diagnosed with skin cancer and no longer can enjoy their patio, so they would like to cover their patio, but they need the relief where the ordinance requires 60 feet. They have 60 feet now, but putting a roof over the existing patio, they'd be at 40 feet, and staff recommends neutral.
Are you okay with that? Okay, next.
Next one is Watts LLC, and so we don't repeat each other, I will let their attorney, Kristen Pianzio,
Oh, I like it
present
when you
the
do all the
application.
talking, Bill. Good evening, Kristen Pianzio from Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Loop, and nice to see you. I have Jerry Watts with me from Watts Restoration, as well as Wayne Kiefer from Showalter and Associates. We do have a plan, if you wanted to put it on the screen. We're here to talk about 1307 Squires Drive. It is one of the historic resource properties in your township located here. The Watts family has been in the business of restoring old homes and stadiums and commercial buildings and historic buildings since the 1920s. They have purchased this property and plan on and have been restoring the home. They've put a new roof on it, they've painted in and out, new gutters, a bathroom. They plan on much more as far as exterior restoration, stonework, stucco, and the like. Your Historic Resource Overlay District incentivizes property owners to utilize a reduction in some of the criteria in order to save these historic resources as opposed to demolishing them to get them out of the way of development. So this plan achieves that. We have 3 new lots proposed. These abut the Mark Salamone development off of Cedar Hill. If you remember, that last year was approved. The lots that are new, 1, 2, and 3, are oversized for your R2. This is the R2 development. It requires a minimum of an acre, and they are all over an acre in size. We have the requirement to achieve the setbacks abutting the property owners all along the perimeter, which we've done. The only thing that the Historic Overlay District allows you to do is to reduce your interior setbacks from lot to lot that are new and proposed and from your street by 20%. The idea is to give you some room to get around this existing structure so that you don't have to take it down. And in so doing, we're able to move the houses away from the neighboring property owners and moving them closer towards the interior street. So we're asking for a special exception. This is a use that's permitted in your code if we meet the requirements. The only variance we have is from the existing structure to our new proposed street. We're required to have 48 feet, and there's a typo in my application. It's 34.44 feet as opposed to the 34.86 that's there. So that's the reason why we're here. We're asking for the board to remain neutral. Obviously, if we get through the zoning hearing board, we'll be back through the subdivision and land development process. We'll have to go through the planning commission, devise land development plans, have them reviewed by your staff and consultants, and appear back before you for the actual moving of the dirt and how this development will play out. We're only here for this setback and the special exception.
Bill, do you have any comments?
No, the staff's recommendation is neutral, and this is a Class 2 historical building, and this is exactly the purpose of the Historical Overlay District, is to preserve that house, that historical house, and allow this to occur in single-family homes in large lots. So as Kristen just mentioned, they'll be in front of you. If they get the variance and the special exception, they'll be back in front of you for land development.
I have a question. There's an existing driveway, and then the driveway is being expanded for the access street, the access road. There's an existing driveway there.
Yep.
This is being expanded for an access road?
Yes, we're utilizing
Widened?
the existing driveway. That'll be the location of the road, right, Wayne?
Is that one of the exceptions, the 25 feet? Seeing 25 feet there between that new road and the adjacent structure. Right?
That's from the property line. It's
Right.
just to dimension that.
It's an expansion of the existing driveway, and it's,
This is going to, yeah, that,
Can flip the sheet too. That shows the existing driveway location.
I'm not sure what you're asking, Mr. Nesbitt.
asking if that is where you need a variance?
No, it's, if you go back to the other sheet, sorry, it's right here, where the house meets the
The road.
interior road, right here.
Front
We
yard.
comply here with the front yard setback. That's the requirement of 60 feet.
But the road and the setback to the property line of less than 25 feet is within the existing ordinance?
Yeah. Normally, you would measure the minimum lot width at the building setback line, but because the interior street's going to actually be a street and not just a driveway, they have all the frontage. Their building setback line would be here.
Yeah, I'm not,
talking about the lot one.
I'm talking
Oh,
about,
concerned about lot one.
no, I'm not. If I had a pointer, I would show you what I'm talking about. If you see where the bump out is on that access street, what do you call it?
The existing house that's not part of this property.
Talking about right here,
Oh,
to the adjacent property owner. It's 25 feet here, so it's got to be less than 25 feet. The question is this taking this, what is an existing driveway, and moving it closer to this structure here?
That's not a problem. It's not a violation.
It's within the ordinance.
Yes.
yes.
If it wasn't, I was just going to suggest buffering, but
There will be a softening buffer.
you're going to put a softening buffer there? Okay.
That's one of the reasons we left the 25 feet in there, is to provide the landscaping that's required.
That's all I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody okay then? Okay, good luck. Good
Great,
luck.
thank you very much.
Next, Cedar Hill.
Cedar Hill, it's actually a Bywood. It's a plan that some more senior members of council are probably aware of. They did get some approval for a 3-lot in the past. It was never built, and they are now proposing a 2-lot. And as with the other one, it'll be a subdivision if they get the variances that they need, and Kristen is also representing this applicant.
Yes, in 2000, they had zoning hearing board relief to have 2 flag lots, both undersized and side-by-side, which your code didn't permit. It also got preliminary plan approval in 2003, and then final approval in 2006. We do have a configuration of that, do you have that plan? That never was recorded or effectuated, the property sat, and then my client, Mr. Hubbard, who's here, looked at that plan. This was the old plan where you had these 2 flag lots side by side sharing this leg. He looked at this and felt that a better design would have dropped from 3 to 2, and that's what we're proposing. There is still a variance for the flag lot being under 5 acres, but we've gotten rid of the second variance for the second flag lot and the other variance for having 2 flag lots side by side. This permits much larger lots, much more open space, and we think this is a better plan. So we're going back to the zoning hearing board with this, and we ask you to be neutral.
What are the variances again?
It's for being a flag lot under 5 acres.
Under 5 acres. What is it going to be?
Lot 1 will be 2.87, it's not a flag, but Lot 2, which is a flag, will be 2.92.
Bill, any comment?
The only comment that I have, is that they, a recommended condition would be, we really don't, it's not at the subdivision land development stage yet, but it's 2 is better than 3. But this is Cedar Hill Road, it's a bend right here. This is Bywood. So I would hope that they hopefully have one driveway that both houses get connected to, rather than having 2 driveway accesses out on Bywood and Stong's Lane. I think that would be a traffic safety issue for those property owners. It's a busy curve. Cedar Hill Road and Stong's is a busy road now. It's a collector road. It's not a residential street. So I hope they would work with us during the process, that they would have one access out for both homes.
And that would be acceptable. And again, we'll be back before you for subdivision and land development, but we plan on them sharing one access drive.
Okay, so if we go neutral with that one thing, Mary?
And that's one access off of Stones, correct? Or off of Cedar Hill?
Maybe we could sort that during,
One access for the two lots as determined by.
determine it
the
during land
subdivision
development?
Land development review process.
Okay,
Fair enough.
that's good by me.
Everybody go with that? Okay, good luck with that one.
Thank you.
Last is Horsham Road Real Estate, Inc.
It's me again.
That's 795 Horsham Road. They are, as you know, Next Gen, we lost Next Gen during the pandemic. You heard me talk about the budget and the effect that the pandemic has had on our companies in Horsham. And one company that we did lose was Next Gen. They, at one point, had over 600 employees in Horsham. Right before the pandemic, they were down to about 300, 350. But this is the building on the corner of Privet and Horsham Road. Good news is, it was purchased by Eurofins, and Eurofins has a local presence in Horsham. So we're happy that they chose Horsham to stay and expand in, and they need some. They're looking for a variance to add a bump out to the side of the building for a loading dock, and I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you. I do have Eric Ritz from Buller with me, and Rich Quashny, who's the president of Eurofins, if you have any questions for them. So we're retrofitting a very old building, and in doing so, there is loading along the rear, and the trash receptacle was here as well. What we'd like to do is, this is the element of our variance. It's this 430 square foot. It's about 20, it's a little over 20 by 20, to have a loading dock where it can back up right to this along the side. So our variance is here from a side yard setback. There is, as you can see, mature trees along this shared property line such that we don't think it'll be a disturbance to our neighboring industrial user. And it doesn't look like we need any relief for the dumpster. So it's just this bump out here for their loading and unloading, because there isn't one. Right now, everything's at grade, and they don't have the ability to use that.
Pretty simple. Any comments on that, Bill?
We've looked at it, that our staff has looked at it, Mike Shinton, and we've looked at it from an emergency. It doesn't block any fire trucks or anything from having access around the building.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, good to
Great.
go.
Thank you.
For
Have a good night.
taking care of
Thank
that. So next is authorizing an agreement of sale and purchase of an agricultural conservation easement to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, and Horsham Township, jointly in perpetuity for the Pennypack Farm on property owned by the College Settlement. Perpetuity, I got that.
Forever.
Forever. Could just put forever. You made me say perpetuity 3 times.
As you know, the county, this is a project or an easement being led by the Montgomery County Planning Commission and the Montgomery County Farm Preservation Board. They were in front of you a few months ago, explaining the program, explaining this piece of property, along with College Settlement folks, and as we're a third or fourth party to this. It's not our lead, it's the county that's doing this. But each level of government, the state, the county, and local, and as you know, they asked for a 15% if it was going to go forward, and at that time when they were here in front of you, they didn't know if it was going to go forward. It is going forward. The state has approved $1,266,200 as their share. The county has approved $396,800, and we have committed $285,000 to this agriculture easement for 31 acres. It's currently, the majority of the property is Pennypack Farm on the College Settlement property, and it's 31 acres that would be protected from any future development in the future.
Questions? Motion? Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi.
You'd have to come up to the mic and state your name and address for the minutes.
Good evening. My name's Karen Thompson. I live at 612 Man Road, which is right across from the Pennypack Farm. And I would just like to know what they can do there once you place this on it. There is a deed restriction from Natural Land Trust on the first 75 feet of that property. And I'd like an explanation of what they can do and what uses they.
This would be an ag security easement under the state ag security program. And it's a program which the state initiates, and they want the county and the local government to have skin in the game to preserve properties for agricultural purposes. A lot of times open spaces for view sheds and just for the open beauty of it. But the focus on this program is to encourage and continue agriculture. So basically, they can do any agricultural uses on the property. They can't construct any other buildings other than agricultural buildings. And their limit is using the property for agricultural purposes.
Is there any write-up on it, any explanation in writing about that? What you just said, is that in writing anywhere that I can have a copy of it?
Well, there's the state ag security law. The county has pamphlets explaining what the ag security law does, and then there's the conservation easement itself, which has not been that has not been adopted yet. I don't know when we're going to settlement, but I heard it's not until at least next year.
Yeah, the last we heard from the county that settlement would probably be in the fall of next year.
Right. So when they go to settlement, it will result in an actual conservation easement document.
Yes.
What they're approving tonight is the agreement of sale to agree to do it. And then that conservation easement document spells very specifically out what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Perfect. And will you see that I get a copy of that, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you
And
very
we can give you, I can make sure you get the agreement of sale that they're approving tonight. It doesn't have that information, but we'll share that agreement of sale with you.
Hey, do we have a motion?
I move to authorize an agreement of sale and purchase of an agricultural conversation easement of 31.6 acres of property owned by College Settlement of Philadelphia, also known as Pennypack Farm, in the amount of $285,000.
Second. Moved in second, is a roll call vote?
And I think it's a voice. Roll call vote. You're correct. Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Nesbitt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wade, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, we have a Police Benevolent Association contract to consider.
So we've been meeting with the township's been meeting with the police since January through the year, negotiating and establishing a new contract. I'm happy to report that in front of you this evening is we've reached a settlement, a tentative agreement. The police PBA membership have ratified the agreement. It's a 5-year agreement that'll end on December 31st, 27. Not to go over 3 pages of items, just the 2 biggest ones that are salary. So it's over the 5-year contract, it's a 20% increase. 5% the first year, 4.25% the second year, 4% the third year, 3.5% the fourth year, and 3.25% the fifth year. And a win for the township is healthcare. So we've always been on an HMO plan. We will be switching to a PPO plan, and it's something that we haven't been able to accomplish in our collective bargaining agreements. But it's a huge savings for the township over the 5 years of the contract. And then we also have a drug and alcohol testing program that will go into effect next year on the uniformed officers. And the rest of it is minor. Those are the 3 big items, I believe. But it's ready for your consideration this evening.
We have a motion.
I hereby authorize a Police Benevolent Association PBA contract.
Second. Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next is considering our 2023 budget and tax levy ordinance.
Not to repeat myself from the budget hearing that you had earlier this evening at 7:30, but the budget is balanced and ready for your consideration.
We have a motion.
I move to adopt the 2023 budget and tax levy ordinance as proposed.
Move to second, it's a roll call vote.
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Nesbitt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wade, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next is just an announcement. The next date and time for our annual reorganizational meeting will be Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023, 7 PM, right here in the Township Building. Any further business? Bill? Nothing further from you?
Nothing from me.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Anybody else?
I do. It's, the heavy heart that I am going to resign from Horsham Council. I have 1 year left on my term. I've served 19 years. At some point this year, it came clear to me that my commitment to my job, I have a law firm, I'm a litigator, I'm actually on trial right now, and ever since COVID ended, the courts opened up. And every month I look at my calendar and I've got at least 2 trials and find myself involved in one of them. And then when I'm on trial, everybody knows that's all I can do. I can't continue, I think, to serve the citizens of Horsham as I was elected to serve with the level that I think is required. I've missed too many meetings. I'm not putting forth the level of commitment to this job that I expect of myself, and I think that all of you should enjoy and that somebody else will do in my stead. I love this job. I really do. It's the best night job anybody can have. Despite the meetings, it can go long, some angry residents, all of those things. This is a really great job. In my day job, I represent doctors and hospitals. In medical malpractice cases, I work really hard, but at the end of the day, I don't build anything. We've built a lot here in Horsham. 19 years with your predecessor, Mike McGee, Bill, we've achieved a lot. There's a lot to be proud of here. I love Horsham. I would love to stay in this role, but I can't. So I'm going to resign. I hope to stay on the Myria because we're doing great things on the Myria, and we will hopefully continue to do great things into the future. I leave not any concerns whatsoever because one thing that I've learned from the day that I got here is that this is the best run town in America. I know I'm biased, but you look at this budget, you look at what we accomplish, you look at what Mr. Walker, with Dennis and Mike and the team, the police and the fire. You know, I know Dan sat through a lot of meetings. This is, you like to think in government, you pull behind a curtain and, oh, you're going to see all this bad stuff. And it's not. This is the real deal. This is good government. And it's hard to leave that, but it's really good to know that with the leadership here, and Bill and Mark, we've served a long time together, and it's been special. But I feel good about it. I mean, I feel good not about leaving, but man, we have our act together here. And you know, I wish more people came to the meetings. I wish more people got to see Bill Walker's budget address. Every time he puts that graph up that shows what our tax base is compared to everybody else, it's really a prideful moment. Mary, wow, it's been great.
It has been great. You've been great.
Well, we've been great. There's no one person here that really makes everything happen. It's a team. So I'm not going to be part of that team, but I'll be around. I'm not leaving. I'm never leaving Horsham. I'll be over in White Marsh at some point, as my dad used to say. Go see me in White Marsh. But that's it. So thank you for everybody. Thank you, everybody here. I don't want any speeches. I don't want anything else.
Well, we will
Please,
honor
I'm
you at a
serious about
different
that.
date.
No, I don't want it. I really don't want anything.
Well, we will.
I don't have time for that.
He doesn't have time.
Okay.
I'm
done taking pictures.
All we can say, Greg, is as heavy a heart as you have leaving, it's just as heavy a heart as accepting that, because you've been a great advocate for Horsham and a great asset to this council and a great friend to boot. 19 years together.
we started out
Stay
together,
married that
and,
long.
yeah, I know, we often said that when we were running for reelection. It's been a great run, and I'm going to miss you personally, even though we're not going to miss you personally, because I'm going to see you, but I'm going to miss you personally here, because it's been great having you right next to me, and, advice, everything that we do up here. It's just been wonderful, and I can't thank you enough for that. So, thank you. That being said, meeting adjourned.